Welcome to this session of the joint meeting of the International Meeting on Video Dance and Video Performance with the Festival International de Videodance de Bourgogne. So we are going to present a session where we are two people, and we have selected some pieces for a special program that we have called Restless in Locked Spaces. So this year we are still in COVID time, but these pieces are not specifically about the COVID or about staying at home during COVID, and even if it is one of the themes, it's more what we have looked for is the fact that people are like in real spaces, a supermarket, a house, an office, and they have to move within this space. And indeed, all of them are restless.
Exactly. And restless doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be an inside space. It can also be an outside space, you know, and we will see some of these works that actually utilize the outside world in wonderful ways.
Okay, so maybe one of the points that are very important in this selection is the fact of filming in a very concrete space, a space that is a daily space, for instance, a house or a supermarket. And the issue is, why is someone dancing, I don't know, in an office? Why is someone dancing in a real space? No, because when we are watching screen dance, video dance, we are watching actually a movie. And if someone is in a garage or someone is in an office, it's because they need to be there. So sometimes you feel awkward when someone is in an office and starts to dance. So, and what's interesting in these pieces is that each has solved this conflict in a different way, and all of them are very interesting, so we are going to watch them. We are going to start with dance Restless, and actually this work gave us kind of the idea of the title of the whole session. And it's a work that has been recorded actually during COVID time. So it's self-recording. So there are four dancer, choreographer, filmmaker, editor all together, because everyone had to take care of filming themselves. And we have Eduardo Zúñiga, who is from Chile and lives in Alicante in Spain, and he's using Beethoven. Edgar Zendejas, who is from Mexico but is in Montreal in Canada. Sebastián Arias, who is from Uruguay and is dancing in Uruguay. Esdras Hernández, who is Spanish but who is in Chile, in Santiago de Chile. So we have a whole combination. It's really multinational, but it has really a common idea. First, it also uses the music by Ludwig van Beethoven, as it's the anniversary of his birth. So, for instance, in the first movement, we have the scherzo of the Ninth Symphony, who is a music that is impossible to use in film, because it's a music that has a lot of rhythm, a lot of it's a triple movement, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which kind of forces the people to turn around. No, it's like a crazy waltzer, if you want. And what's interesting is that instead of taking like a slow movement of Beethoven and using it as a background music, everyone is crazy. He is holding the camera and moving restlessly, and the music of Beethoven is completely crazy and rhythmical and it goes all the way together instead of trying to kind of subdue some of the features of the music or of the dance. And it's also very, very interesting because the dancer, choreographer, filmmaker is holding the camera, and instead of being a disadvantage, it's an advantage. He's playing with the camera, he's playing with us, looking at us and moving around. And maybe if someone else had been recording and now let's change the light and let's do this, it would have been a completely different piece, and it would have lost maybe the interest of recording yourself and being crazy about it.
It makes it more real too, to be able to do that, because if you're not so worried about the formal aspects of filmmaking, then you have the freedom to actually experiment and play with the audiovisual language. So another thing that is actually very interesting about this work is that each of the 4 directors and choreographers have very distinct proposals, and the whole piece itself has a very dynamic style of editing, which makes it very interesting, because not only you're watching 4 different pieces, you're also watching an entire work that works together perfectly, because it intertwines each of these 4 pieces that are very well identified in its own with the whole process of the entire work.
Yes, and there is indeed a lot of contrast as well in the music. They use then like Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven. In a derived way, which is like the typical smooth music, etc. And it all effectively comes together very, very nicely.
Caracol, col, col, saca los cuernos para el sol, que te vienen a buscar a la orilla de la mar. Caracol, col, col, saca los cuernos para el sol, que te vienen a buscar a la orilla de la mar. Si vos vienes y yo voy, ¿dónde está tu corazón? Tengo que saber si yo tengo un poco de razón. Si vos vienes y yo voy, ¿dónde está tu corazón? Tengo que saber si yo tengo un poco de razón. Caracol, col, col, saca los cuernos para el sol, que te vienen a buscar a la orilla de la mar. Caracol, col, col, saca los cuernos para el sol, que te vienen a buscar a la orilla de la mar.
From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom reign. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom reign. From the high realities of Pennsylvania, let freedom
I'm always angry.
Caracol, col, col, saca los cuernos para el sol, que te vienen a buscar a la orilla de la mar.
Un caracol.
So now the second piece comes from France, and the director is Marine Pichon. So this is really an interesting piece, isn't it?
It is very interesting because it narrates the evolution of these two women at their desk jobs, and it explores their robot-like movements where they're indicating their boredom and tiredness of their workload. And it's actually very well synchronized, and it's using everyday common movements that we use at work as their base of the choreography. So it's actually very interesting because the movements are completely justified in this inside space, which is the office which they're working at. Also, it's very interesting that the choreography and their movements are actually able to show us completely their psychological evolution through this stage of boredom till they actually finally kind of lose it in a little way, and then they can be a little bit more free from their everyday life.
Yes, and indeed it's surprising because they have integrated like everyday movement, like typing and other sort of movement, but it's really, really, really very strictly choreographed. Everything is really in sync, and it shows that they are great dancers and that great choreography, and the music is probably used afterwards, but also in the recording, because there is really a synchronization between the energy of the music and the energy of the dance, and all this continuity between spaces and movement is absolutely well thought, and really there is a thought of choreography, but also of editing and how to use the editing. So it's a masterpiece in that sense. So now we are going to the next piece, which is Cascade. It also comes from France. And this title has a double meaning in French. It means waterfall, but it also means stunt, like in a stuntman. And indeed, this piece is really around the acrobacy that the main dancer can achieve, and it's very much based on this acrobacy that goes in different places. So at the beginning we are in a supermarket, and somehow the dancer, the character, has like a natural movement. He's someone in a supermarket moving like a shopper. Yeah? But then the music changes, and also the setting, and we change from the world of natural movement, real movement, realistic, to the absolute craze of the music, and really this dance, which is very acrobatic. And then the piece starts. And it's very interesting because then at some points we have the musicians that appear in the scene. So all the scene of the supermarket or the outside spaces that they use becomes really like a musical space where kind of everything becomes musical and dance. So in this piece, for instance, it's interesting because at the beginning you would say, why is this person dancing or moving acrobatically in a supermarket? But the fact that they play with this alternance, this switching between dance music and reality is very interesting, and I think it goes very well with their description, which says, trapped in his daily life, an individual embarks on a symbolic journey to encounter his deepest fears. So it's really this imaginary world that fights against the real life.
It's also very interesting that the beginning part at the supermarket could kind of be like a comedy where it has like fun persecutions in this space, while the other part of this work, which is outside, it comes a little bit more darker, which explores a little bit more of these fears. And also the camera proposal also changes a little bit, and we can see in a more frightening kind of sense this character's point of view in this symbolic journey.
But indeed, the theme of this session, which is restless in locked spaces, here it applies at the beginning. I mean, it's the example of restlessness.
Following, we have Startle or Sobresalto from the director Hazel González and Esteban Richmond. They're from Costa Rica, and they're actually telling us that this piece, it kind of explains from a subjective point of view the nature of the human being when they try to deal with the real world. Because it's not so narrative, it's very interesting how they're trying this theme in a black and white kind of a picture that has really interesting imagery. We can also see very expressive dancers that are definitely very restless in this locked space. And also, as we saw in the before Cascades or Cascades,
Cascade.
Cascade. And also, as we saw in Cascades, we could see two parts, one that it's inside and another one which is outside. This is interesting because this restlessness, as we said before, doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be inside of an interior. It can also be in an exterior location.
Indeed, I think the title Sobresalto, Startle, and the filmmaking style refers very much to the horror movies or the thrillers where we jump constantly. So it's really dance. It's a lot of dance, but at the same time, it has the visual codes of horror movies and the framing. People are distorted with framing and all that. And I think with this thriller, they have had a lot of fun, and it was really interesting to watch. we are going now to switch to the next piece, which is It Cries Too Loudly. So this comes from the US, but the director and choreographer is Dolly Sfeir, I don't know how to pronounce it, who grew up in Lebanon and came at a later age to the US. I say that because even if it is an American movie, etc., for me, the first time I saw it, it kind of gave me like an old world feeling. Maybe the way the actors, the dancers move and the themes are something which are universal, but for me is something related to the old world. So here we have really the theme of the locked space, and as opposed to the open space, and but also the symbolic locking. So you have the church, you have this bourgeois space where everyone is kind of tight and stuffed in a way. And then you have, in particular, the outside, which brings these explosions of movement and energy. So I really think this piece works very much with this contrast and this going from one space to the other and exploring what it means to be locked or confined, maybe not so much by the physical space, but by the mental space and the symbolism that it brings. And here it's very important to note that the director is a choreographer, because this is really a dance piece, so where you need really very, very high-level dancers that bring their energy and the precision to this piece.
Also, it's interesting because on her explanation, she's talking about the 2020 bombing in Beirut, and actually this work is kind of like her own personal reflection on that event, while being an immigrant and not being able to go back home in a sense, and just staying locked in the US.
And in this case, the music acts like a background which unifies kind of everything with a soft feeling. It's a bittersweet feeling, but it's very, very strange, because we have the feeling that they're dancing and moving, and that the editing is following this music, even if kind of the energy and the text content is kind of different. So this is something that is very, very surprising and very well done.
teus cabelos nos ombros caídos, negros como as noites que não têm luar. Teus lábios de rosa para mim sorrindo, e a doce meiguice desse teu olhar. Índia da pele morena, tua boca pequena, eu quero beijar. Índia, sangue tupi, tens o cheiro da flor. Vem que eu quero te dar todo meu grande amor. Quando eu for embora para bem distante e chegar a hora de dizer-te adeus, fica nos meus braços só mais um instante. Deixa os meus lábios se unirem aos teus. Um dia levarei saudade da felicidade que você me deu. Índia, tua imagem sempre comigo vai. Dentro do meu coração, todo meu Paraguai. Índia, teus cabelos nos ombros caídos, negros como as noites que não têm luar. Teus lábios de rosa para mim sorrindo, e a doce meiguice desse teu olhar. Índia da pele morena, tua boca pequena, eu quero beijar. Índia, sangue tupi, tens o cheiro da flor. Vem que eu quero te dar todo meu grande amor. Quando eu for embora para bem distante e chegar a hora de dizer-te adeus, fica nos meus braços só mais um instante. Deixa os meus lábios se unirem aos teus.
So with this piece, we are going to close this session, and we would ask you to really look at these pieces, even those that are longer, because they have really they need you to get inside and follow the director and the dancers to the end and follow their discourse. And hopefully you won't get too restless in your locked space.